Alright guys, welcome back to the channel, and this is my first Corgi toys. It's on the scale of 1/43rd. It's a 1965 Mustang Fastback 2+2. 2+2 means that it has 2 seats in the front, 2 seats in the back. It's a long story about where the 2+2 comes from. But at the time of this recording, I believe this is the first restoration video on the number 320 Corgi Toys Mustang Fastback. So let's have a quick rundown of the available variation of this model. So this model was released in April of 1965, and it was available in 4 colors. You had metallic purple, metallic silver, metallic deep blue, and pea green. Kind of a weird color, isn't it? It did sport opening doors and reclining seats. So the story goes that Corgi and Dinky Toys rushed to get the permit from Ford to create their diecast model. Therefore, that's why it was released in 1965, and the model did not make it to the 1965 Corgi Toys catalog. What you're seeing is a page from the 1966 catalog. You can see it on silver, and on the right you can see the picture that they chose for a smaller catalog that was called the Pocket Catalog. Alright, so I'm going to divide this video in chapters. There's going to be a very detailed description down below, and everything is going to have a title and a time step in case you're in a hurry to go nowhere. So first thing first, let's compare this Corgi Toys to a Matchbox Super Kings and a Hot Wheels made in Italy. Alright, so here's the 3 models: Corgi, Matchbox, and Hot Wheels. This is a K24 Matchbox Lamborghini Miura and a Hot Wheels Lamborghini Miura made in Italy. It was a company that Hot Wheels bought a long time ago. You can see the Hot Wheels version has a lot more details. It opens up the front and shows the spare tire. The Matchbox doesn't do that, but you can see they're pretty much very close in size. I think even the tires are pretty similar too, but I'll go into details. Of course, Hot Wheels version has a different tire. Alright, so this model was available with 3 different type of wheels. Early models had shaped wheels. They're kind of difficult to find. Most had the wire wheels. That's the one I have. And then later models had cast wheels. They look kind of funky to me. So wire wheels most common, and happens to be the one that I like the most. So in 1965, these were the options for tires for Corgi models. The Mustang has the 1450 tires, diameter 15 millimeter, just in case you were wondering. So my car has red interiors. The real car, the ones that had red interiors, were called Red Pony Interior. As you can see, it has the Mustang horses on the seat, and there was a difference on the dash. I believe the dash was similar to the GT model. So that's something I learned while doing research for this video. Alright, so every tool that I use on this video is going to have a link down below if you want to get it. So this is the opening doors, and these are the reclining seats. I'll give you a better look once we drill it open. You can see both seats have that function. I'm not speeding up anything on this video. I'm gonna go slow, show you exactly everything I had to do to open it. This is a automatic center punch, adjustable. So there I'm just creating a little dimple so that first drill bit that I use doesn't go flying around all over the place and damaging the chassis. It's just a common practice when working with metal. This is a baby oil, nothing fancy. I'll also have links to those squeeze bottles. So right now I'm using a 1/16 drill bit. 1/16. I use baby wipes. All the metal debris falls on the baby wipe and it's a lot easier to clean up. So I'm going slow because this is my first time doing a Corgi. I don't really know the condition of the post, how does it look inside. So I'm taking it easy. Alright, so now I'm changing over to a 7/32 drill bit. But my drill bit is kind of worn out and it's not sharp enough to remove the metal, as you can see, because this car does have a big rivet or a mushroom post, which is actually a mushroom post. So I'm gonna switch over to a smaller 9/64 drill bit to remove more of the metal. That way the bigger drill bit, the 7/32, doesn't have to do that much work. So now I'm changing back to the 7/32, and now it's a lot easier to remove the remaining metal of that mushroom post. Now I go back to using the center punch. I don't like prying up the cars with anything behind it, because that tends to twist the metal chassis and all that stuff. So if you knock it with the automatic center punch, everything will come loose. This is the axle with the wheels. The tires are in very bad shape. They're dry and rotted. This is the interior, well, the bumpers, chrome bumpers. We're gonna have to restore that. I'm gonna show you how I restore it. We gotta sand it down, fix a broken piece on the back bumper, and would you look at that, we have a 56-year-old spiderweb inside. Isn't that fun? Sticky too. Okay, so that's the seats. That's the reclining seats again. You can see we have a Corgi dog in the back, just chilling back there. Here goes the first door. They're 3-piece. I'll show you more once we take it apart. That's a piece of plastic just holding pressure on the door so they remain closed, and the dash and the steering wheel. And luckily the windshield doesn't have a rivet holding it. That'll be restored. I have a complete video on how I restore windshields. So you can see we have the dual headlights. We're going to show you how I removed them. And I didn't know how or what material was that front grille was made out of. Alright, so my idea is using 100% acetone, industrial acetone. I'll leave a link down below also. And I'm putting in acetone around the headlights and the dash. And of course the acetone is going to remove that old paint. Later on we're going to try to restore it, but I think I'm going to need a new grill, just to let you know ahead. It doesn't break, but this one is, it's pretty beat up. So this tool is used for repairing cell phones. It's very thin. It's actually used to take its cell phone and split it. You can see I could get around the border, and right now I'm just trying to see if I can figure it out how to lift it, because most likely it has glue. That's why I put the acetone, and I can see I'm taking out some of that glue residue. But this thing is very fragile. It's actually foil paper or aluminum paper. Once the acetone starts working, I can see that if I press on a corner, it'll lift somewhere else, and I basically stick a flat tip screwdriver to be able to lift it. I'm just applying a little bit more acetone, because you gotta remember that thing's been there for 56 years and it hasn't fallen off. Yeah, that didn't work. And it's also very difficult trying to see with a camera in front of you. But this being the first Mustang restoration, everything had to be recorded. So there I can see that it'll start lifting, and now I could See, I got a chunk of it, and that's where I figured out that it was too thin. In trying to separate it, it actually deformed the very fragile art in front of it. I think I still did a good job putting it back, but I could really use a spare. It's still sticky. Now for the headlights, I used the center punch right on the back. Knocked it a few times, and I could see that the headlight kind of popped out a little. There it came out. But it still has glue. And on the other side, it actually came out a lot faster. It just flew out. There it is. And that's how you take out the jewel headlights on a Corgi toys. Or at least that's how I did it. Now there is another piece of some sort of metal in there, but it didn't want to come out, so I had to resort to another method. Alright, so there you can see that I'm trying to poke at it. I'm starting to believe that that little piece of housing holding the jeweled headlights might have been made out of maybe aluminum or something. It was soft metal, and it was really glued in there. It did not want to come out. You pretty much see that it's just falling apart as I'm trying to grab it. But nothing to be worried about. Later on, I'll show you how to recreate that little piece of housing to hold the jeweled headlights. You can see that I try to keep poking at it. Here's a closer look. Yeah, it's basically not coming out the easy way. Alright, so to clean that the headlight hole, I'm using some baby oil again, and I'm gonna use a 1/8 drill bit, but in reverse. The 1/8 drill bit is a tad smaller than the 9/64. It's commonly used when removing the mushroom post on the old Hot Wheels red lines. You can see I'm just cleaning, not really removing anything. The paint remover will continue to clean the hole up. Alright, so I went back to the 1/16 drill bit, and what I'm doing here is I'm taking it easy, and I'm just going to drill as far down as I need for the screw that I'm going to use. Remember, 1/16 is just going to be the pilot hole, and will also help the bigger drill bit that I'm going to use. that's the correct size for the screws that I'm gonna use. Not really in a rush. Alright, so for this car, I'm going to be using the 440 screws. And for that, I need the number 43 drill bit. And because I already pre-drilled a pilot hole, this drill bit doesn't really have to do all that much work. The depth of the hole is already made, so it's just clearing out, making the hole big enough. Now with the number 43, you're gonna need the 440 tab, which I'm also gonna show you. You could also use a 3/32 drill bit, 3/32, and with the 3/32 it's just a tad bigger than the number 43, and you don't have to use the tab to for the screws. Alright, so there's two types of tab. There's a regular tab, which they're kind of pointy, and then there's the bottoming tab that they have a flat top. These are good when you have short posts and you need to get threads all the way to the bottom. I recommend having both, especially if you're doing it like a pickup and it has a short post in the back. The bottoming tab works wonders. All right, so take apart the door. I'm using that cell phone tool again, and I just pop it off. You see, it had a little bit of glue, and it does have two mushroom posts there holding the window. So we're gonna have to drill them to be able to remove the window. Let's do the other one. I don't recommend doing this with a small flat tip screwdriver as it's too thick. Alright, so now I'm using the 9/64 drill bit to remove that the mushroom post there holding the windows. 9/64 worked nicely because I'm able to pop the windows back in at the end without using any glue. Alright, so these are the screws that I'm going to use. They are 440 Phillips style, but they're special because they have a undercut on the bottom. They're not like the cone type, and they sit perfectly on the chassis. They also work on Hot Wheels. I made a video showing you how to prepare Hot Wheels for this type of screw. So I always like to make sure that everything goes back together before I paint. And it does. Now for the screwdriver, you need to use a JIS screwdriver, which is Japanese Industry Standards. It's a number 0. If you use a regular Phillips screwdriver, you're gonna mess up the screw. And like I always say, the only place you're gonna find a Phillips screw is in a hardware store like Home Depot. Phillips screws are for wood. JIS screws are in electronic and even in your vehicle, even if it's not Japanese. Right? Alright, to restore the chrome parts, the front and back bumpers, I like to use Easy Off, the blue kind. Put a picture up on the screen. And this thing works slow. It also works perfectly if you have like paint on windshields and all that stuff. So that little bit of Easy Off's been there for like a year. And what I do, I just cover it up and I leave it, and I'll come back to it like 1 or 2 days later. You could also use Clorox. Clorox works good too. Right, so this is how the car looks after the paint stripper. You see that there's quite a bit of toning, but that's kind of normal for a car being that old. These are the doors and the casting. You can see it has a factory damage there. The hole goes in to the other side. And I'm gonna clean up a little bit of the flashing. I mean, why not, right? I was fighting the whole time to make a custom with this. So this is the bumpers all stripped out. And now we're gonna fix that corner over there before we re-chrome it using the EPO putty. Again, everything's gonna have a link down below. And that piece of tab there, it's kind of broken. Suspension, and that's why the car, the suspension wasn't really working on that side. So we're gonna fix that too before chroming it also. Alright, so I'm gonna be using these very small drill bits. The metal is very thin. Using this pin vise. So I'm just gonna go slowly, and I'm gonna step up the drill bit bigger in size, just to the point where I could make a hole big enough to stick a piece of metal or a piece of needle, which will serve as a kind of a skeleton to hold the putty. Alright, so now I'm using a little bit of Gorilla Gel Glue to fix that broken suspension tab. And what I want to do is I'm going to stick a piece of polystyrene on top just to reinforce it, so it'll be a little bit stiffer and the suspension works like it was brand new. Right, so equal parts of the EPO putty, use water, mix them together, and I'm basically just gonna stick it to that end with that metal piece or piece of needle, and then after that I'll have to wait. I waited until next day until it got hard, and then I'll sand it to shape. Alright, so while that was done and I was waiting, I'm putting the axle and tires into hot water just so I can see if I could take them apart or take them off the wheel without breaking them. The water's kind of hot, but like I said, they're drying, and I was able to take them off, but they were such a bad shape that I just ordered new ones. I ordered replacement. I'll also leave a link for that down below. The new ones they look much better. You'll see it later on the video. Right, so this is how the car looks after the electro polish system. I'll leave a link down below for that if you want to see how that's done. But with this system, basically the car went back to day number 1. It's nice and clean and shiny. Right, so next day over, I already started sanding at this point, and you can see that I'm slowly giving back the original shape to that broken corner. Alright, so I spread it down with some dupli-color base coat just because the base coat is kind of thick and it does a good job hiding any small imperfections. So now to re-chrome everything, I'm using this refill bottle of Molotov chrome liquid here. I'm using a cheapo dual action airbrush with a 0.3 needle at 30 psi. This might require you to practice a little bit because you do have to hit it with heavy coats. If they're not heavy, it doesn't look like a mirror or chrome. I've done videos in the past doing this, but decided to include it here just so you can see it. Right, so once you're happy with it, you gotta leave it alone, covered for at least 3 days. You can't touch it. You have to leave it alone for at least 3 days. Right, so I'm going to be using some of this micro crystalline wax polish on the wire wheels and the axle to help them preserve them, just so they don't get tarnished again. I'll also leave a link for that down below. Alright, so we're gonna start working back with the front grill, and I'm using this very thin double-sided tape commonly used for, guess what, cell phones. So kind of be using a lot of tools from cell phones here. I'll also leave a link down below. I'm pretty sure from the factory might have used some type of glue, but It's a lot safer to use double-sided tape and a lot easier. All right, so once it's in there, we'll paint it all the way at the end. All right, so we're gonna go back to working with the headlights. I'm gonna be using this 3mm tube, and yes, it's gonna have a link down below. So I cut a piece. The small piece is what's gonna hold the dual headlights, and then everything is gonna be put inside the car. So using a toothpick, I'm gonna put some Gorilla Gel glue inside, and then that's gonna hold the jeweled headlight in place. It took me a while because I kind of difficult to see. All right, so I'm gonna put more Gorilla Gel glue inside the car. I'm trying not to mess up and put glue in other places. So I'm sorry if I was not paying attention to the screen. All right, so let the bottle of the headlight socket begin. And I'm using like a 3-time magnifying glasses, but this thing is so tiny that it's kind of difficult. I need to set it in a perfect angle just so I can drop it. Push it inside the hole. I'm trying to be very careful not to get glue on top of the jeweled crystal, if you want to call it a crystal. So now I use some accelerator that I just put in this squeeze bottle because it's a lot easier to apply. And then using these small applicators, I take advantage of it being wet, and I just clean the jewel headlight. Alright, so now let's start putting the doors back together. Here's the window. The window has kind of an angle, so it kind of tilts towards the inside of the car. That should serve you as a guide. And I just snap everything into. Alright, so this is the restore windshield. Again, I have a video in that whole process. There's gonna be a link down below. Start putting everything back together. You gotta put in the doors first. Well, actually, you gotta put the windshield first, then the doors. Make sure they're in there. Now goes the dash. Make sure you don't put it in backwards. Then goes the plastic piece that applies pressure on the doors so they don't flop open. And then comes the seat. Look, 3 pedals. So that means this car is a manual transmission car. It's a stick. Here comes the bumper, all nice and restored. Check that out. And here comes the axle with the new tires. Now, because I already checked before painting, I know that everything's gonna go back smoothly. And now all I have to do is put in the screws and start working on the front grille and the tail lights. Alright, for the paint in the front, I'm going to be using Vallejo primer. And I'm going to be using this syringe, which comes in the kit with the bottles. It was not deep enough. Can't see. Trying to see. There you go. So now I got some paint. I see that a lot of paint is going to come out, so clean the tip. So you want just a little bit of paint, you don't want a lot. So this method, it helps you control the paint. You're not really dipping in a whole lot of paint. Now, once I have enough paint, all I do is use a hair dryer to dry it out. Alright, so at this point, I have cleaned the needle, the syringe. There's nothing inside. I use hot water to clean it. And I'm using the tip to lightly take away the excess paint on those raised areas, which at this point, there's not a lot of it. If you know where I could buy a replacement front grille for this car, let me know. And I just try to make it as good as possible. Alright, so now I'm gonna paint the taillights. I could have done that earlier, but the car I used to paint the car, I used duplicate color base coat, which is a metallic silver, and then I hit it with some mint wax polyurethane clear coat. For me to be able to done that before, I would have had to wait for the paint to dry and then done the taillights and then do the clear coat. So I just did everything at once and it could easily be done at the end. So I'm using these pens, which are typically used to paint nails. They're kind of rubber and very thin, and they give you a lot of control. I'll also leave a link to that kit. Now, from factory, I just had a big blob of red paint. I'm trying to stay within the lines there as much as I can. So that paint is acrylic. It's gonna dry flat, but I'm gonna show you how to fix it. So once I have enough paint, what I do is I hit it with the hair dryer again, make sure it's dry, and then I'll come back to it. Right, so once the paint is dry, I come back with a Vallejo glass varnish. This line is for it's included with the candy paint. Well, it's not included, you have to buy everything separate, but it's designed to work with the candy paints, but I use it for this. Look, I just use a little bit and I put it on top, and this will make the paint look shiny, and it will actually protect it also, as over time that gloss varnish gets harder. All right, you made it all the way to the end, and this is what we started with. It didn't really look that bad until you look closely and you miss that missing piece from that back bumper. Chipped paint. The windshield wasn't looking very nice. The wire wheels looked dull. And this is the final product. I hope you liked this video and all the information. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, share it with your friends if you want. If you don't want to, then don't do it. But it did take me a long time to go through all the steps to do this car. It was a lot more work than like restoring an old Hot Wheels Redline. But it was definitely fun. And I do have another Corgi on the bench. So keep an eye out for that. I'll see you on the next one.